Become a sustaining member of the Commonwealth Club for just $10 a month. Join today.
It is my pleasure to extend a special welcome to any new club members who are here for this digital program. I encourage our viewers to become members of the Commonwealth Club. To learn more about membership and its benefits, please visit the club at www.commonwealthclub.org. To support the club right now with a tax-deductible donation, please click the blue donate button on your screen. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. BJ Fogg. Dr. Fogg is a behavior scientist at Stanford, where he directs research and innovation at the Behavior Design Lab. He also teaches his models and methods in graduate seminars. On the industry side, BJ trains innovators to use his work so they can create solutions that influence behavior. The focus areas include health, sustainability, financial well-being, learning, productivity, and engagement. His early works on persuasive technology has informed the design of products that millions love and use every day, including Instagram, which one of his students co-founded. BJ created a new method of habit formation called Tiny Habits. Using his online platform and email, he has personally coached over 60,000 people in creating habits. Fortune magazine named BJ a new guru you should know for his insights about mobile and social networks. Find out more at bjfogg.com and tinyhabits.com. You may purchase Dr. Fogg's New York Times bestselling book today from the Commonwealth Club, Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything. Welcome, Dr. Fogg.
Hey, Patty, thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here.
We're so happy that you are here. I've been following you and learning from you for quite some time. We might get into that later when we talk about anchor habits and things. So you began your journey designing business solutions, getting fit, saving money, driving efficiently. And then you tinkered with these concepts and brought them into your personal life, the genesis of Tiny Habits. So tell us more about that journey, the anatomy of Tiny Habits, and maybe your anchor moment and what that means.
Yeah, it was about 11, maybe 12 years ago when I was in my 40s and I was concerned about where my health was going and, my productivity and so on. I was running conferences at Stanford, which was really stressful, as you know. Yeah. I was doing research, teaching, doing stuff out in industry. And I was like, oh man, BJ, just do the math, project forward. Where are you going to be if you don't change? And I did not like that scenario ahead of me. And so I was thinking, well, how do I really optimize my life? And I looked at my own behavior model, the graphical version, the one with the curved line, and literally looking at a graphic of my own model, the Fogg behavior model, I saw that if a behavior is really, really easy to do, like a habit is really, really easy to do, you don't need a lot of motivation. The motivation can be super low. Yeah. And I thought, well, let me try this. Let me make flossing really, really simple. Not all my teeth, but one tooth. Let me make drinking water really simple. Not drink a glass of water, just pour the glass of water. Let me make vitamins really simple. Don't take the vitamins, just set them out as the first step. And what I found when you combine that with a prompt, with something that says, do it now, it is a way to create habits really quickly and easily. You can be very reliable. And so I goofed around for about a year with this method that's now called Tiny Habits. And I taught a Stanford class that was all about making small changes and so on. And then I started coaching people and I pulled the method together and I thought, well, I'm going to share this beyond Stanford. And I started coaching people for free through email. Patty, I thought 6 people would sign up. I distinctly remember it was about December 3rd or 4th. I'd submitted my grades to Stanford and I was like, oh, I'm off. Now what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to teach people Tiny Habits. So I posted to Facebook like, hey, do you want to learn this new way to create habits? I thought 6 would sign up. I got like 60. And then I coached them during the week through email, and it went great. And then the next week, 180 signed up just by word of mouth. And it's just gone on since then. So that was over 10 years ago. And I coached hundreds of people week after week after week. And we'll get into that. But the whole thing started because of my own concern about where my life was headed. And I was just kind of looked ahead and said, man, if I don't change things, I'm going to end up in a spot where I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And so I really I used my own model to create a method and hack my own behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, it works. So you look great. You're obviously very healthy. And so it's those tiny habits. And what I learned from Dr. Fogg years ago, when I first read his book, is about tiny habits, that I have tea, a cup of tea every morning. So my first tiny habit, and I've been doing it ever since, the tea steeps for 3 minutes, and I just lean against the kitchen counter and I do my push-ups, 25 push-ups, so, all those years later, my arms would look different now if I hadn't followed that tiny habit. So I'm very thankful for that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So explain what your B equals MAP means.
Yeah. So that is what I call the Fogg behavior model. And that's what inspired the tiny habits method. So they go together, but the behavior model goes like this. A behavior happens when, and a habit is a type of behavior. It's a subset. So behavior happens when 3 things come together at the same moment. There's motivation to do the behavior. There's ability to do the behavior, and there's a prompt. And if any one of those things is missing, the behavior won't happen. And they work together. And the insight so that's the written form. I read it up, B equals MAP, but there's a graphical version on XY axes. That's the same idea, but it's a richer insight. And it shows that motivation and ability work like teammates. And if something is really hard to do, then you have to have lots of motivation, or it won't happen. If something is really easy to do, then the motivation could be low or high. So there's a relationship between ability and motivation. And that was my insight looking at my own models, like, wow. So if I don't say I'm going to exercise, go running for an hour a day, which is going to require a lot of motivation and sustaining it, instead just put on my running shoes, which doesn't take a lot of motivation, then you can be really consistent. And you have, and that led to the tiny habits method, and a pretty, it's really simple, but it's a sophisticated system for creating any habit that you want. And it's easier and faster than people think.
So you have done in your lab, in order to kind of figure this out, you did all sorts. Did you do an actual clinical trial with people in motivations, or did you just take the N of ones and multiply that by 60,000 people? How did you?
All of this was kind of a massive accident, like a lot of breakthroughs are. It was just me, the school year was over and I'm going to start teaching this, but as a data person, I would measure the results week after week. Yeah. So this was not at the beginning. It was not like a Stanford, I'm going to run this experiment. It's like, I'm teaching people. Right. I'm measuring the results. I'm going to improve the program. I'm going to change it up. Like there were some weeks where people had habit buddies, some weeks where they worked alone. And I looked at the results of that. There were some times when people do it through email versus texting, and I would look at the difference of that. So I just did a whole bunch of iterations to optimize the program. And it just, and then just this coaching people week after week, which I didn't get paid for. It wasn't like a funded Stanford research project for me to coach 300 people a week. It was just, I wanted to help people. In fact, I remember very specifically sitting before we had a place in Maui. We were in a lovely spot in Maui named McKenna. I'm sitting there on the balcony on the computer coaching, a few hundred people. And I could do it like in 30 or 40 minutes a day. And I just remember my partner going, "What are you doing?" And it's like, of course, I'm doing tiny habits. And so that just became a part of my daily life. Either I was coaching people or on the weekends, I was looking at the data and evaluating. And so it was just this kind of approach to habits and research that, thousands and thousands of people, and I was personally coaching them. So on one hand, you get the data and the insights, and then on the other hand, you get as, involved and
Yeah.
seeing everything. You get
Yeah.
just this firsthand experience of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, personal experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you say that motivation is unreliable. What does that mean?
Well, I'm calling out, I mean, motivation matters a lot, but a big part of my work is to help people understand that you might be motivated for something in this very moment. Like, oh, I'm going to eat, I'm always going to eat fermented foods because you just came from a fermentation festival. But then tomorrow or the next day, your motivation to eat fermented foods may sag. In fact, it probably will. So motivation is dynamic. It fluctuates over time. The academic research on this is very recent. We do not have decades and decades, you would think, for something that's so common, something that we all get. Mm-hmm. That our motivation will shift around. You would think there'd be a long history of academic research on it. There's not. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there wasn't even a good name for this shift. You can look up dynamics of motivation fluctuations. Those would be the terms you might use previously to look in the academic literature. Mm-hmm. So at a certain point, along with David Sobel and other people who were working with me, we called it, and this is David's term, motivation wave. So now there's a term for it. It's a wave. It will go up and it will come down. And you're motivated to do different things in different times. So the waves are firing in different parts of your lives at different times. In other words, it might be big in one area and small, and it might be really big at getting your taxes filed. Yeah. And once that gets done, then that's going to go down, and it might get really big at, your mom's birthday is coming up and you want to make it special. And when that's done, that goes down. And so our motivation shifts. And that means for any given thing, like eating fermented food, we can't always rely that we're going to be super motivated to do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, really good point. I'm sure everybody right now is thinking about all this and in their own lives and how it ebbs and flows, and it could be something as simple as these jeans are a little tight. That's the motivation for, stopping doing whatever made the jeans too tight. But you talk about anchor behaviors, and I think we should talk about anchor behaviors before we talk about golden behaviors. So let's start with anchor and then move on to golden. I love these terms.
Great. So the foundation to understanding all of behavior, and I really do mean that, I know that sounds like a very ambitious claim, but it is true, is motivation ability prompt that applies to all behaviors in all cultures, all ages, and all behavior types. And a one-time action is different than a habit. And a stopping a behavior is different than starting, and so on. But motivation ability prompt applies to all of them. So as we apply it to habits, we've talked about make it really easy so you don't need tons of motivation. But then what about the prompt? What's going to prompt the habit? And the hack in Tiny Habits, and I gave a TED talk on this. It came to me like a lot of insights that you hear in stories. It was that, like, I got out of the shower and bam. Yeah. You need something to remind you to do a habit. And rather than using Post-it notes or alarms and just relying on your memory in the Tiny Habits way, you look for something you already do, an existing routine. And we call that an anchor. So to your comment, this anchor moment, what do I already do? Like starting my tea, that will remind me to do my new habit, which would be push-ups against the kitchen counter. Yeah. So that's a hack. So you're not relying on memory. You're not relying on something external. You're building the habit into what you already do. You're fitting it into your routine. You're finding, where does this come after something I already do? And we call that an anchor. And I call it anchor, Patty, because the idea was you are attaching this thing to something, this anchor moment, this routine that's very firm in your life. You're anchoring down the new habit. That's why I called it an anchor.
Yeah. Well, and everybody can think about their habits right now as they're listening to this. And I think everybody brushes their teeth. So while you're brushing your teeth, maybe, do some squats or whatever. Everybody has anchor habits that they do every day.
Absolutely. I mean, one great way to create new habits is just to list all the reliable routines you do daily. By the way, daily habits are a lot easier than every other day habits, a lot easier than once a week. Daily habits, because we're kind of 24-hour creatures. Yeah. So list all the routines you do very reliably, like brushing your teeth and putting on your shoes and starting the tea. And then think, what new habit could come right after that? That would just fit and work.
Yeah.
And so you could say, after I start brushing my teeth, I will,
Yeah.
and then figure out what that habit is. It could be, I will think of someone in my life I'm grateful for, a gratitude habit. It could be, I will identify my top priority for today, more of a productivity habit. Whatever might fit really well, you can just sequence it right after the beginning of brushing. And so for most of us, we have 2 minutes right there to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, after all this time of my tea and my push-ups and all the other little tiny habits that I've built in, I never thought until you just said it that I could build in, because I think I'm pretty grateful for my life all the time, but to bring in things like gratitude or optimism or something good. I think I hadn't, for some reason, BJ hadn't put that in my head.
Yeah, well, let me build on that, and thank you for inviting this. So one habit that I've done for years, and it kind of is like starting the tea, is after I turn on the shower.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting some seconds for water to warm up. Yeah. I will think of something about my body for which I'm grateful.
Ooh, good one.
And after a few years, you got to get kind of creative about that. And, like I got a little cut from gardening. Oh, I'm grateful that this cut healed. The pain in my knuckles went away. Oh, I'm grateful that the pain went away. I'm grateful that, etc. What happens, what seems to happen, now I know this from the data of Tiny Habits, but is the habit will then generalize. You will be more grateful for your body at other moments of your life. And so we see that in the data week after week. Habits have ripple effects, and you do similar habits in other moments of your life, even if you haven't anchored them or planned them. So one piece of research I would love to do, maybe this is next year, I can't do it this year, is to have people do that body gratitude. Ooh, and then see if they naturally start making other changes to honor their body, because they have a daily habit of thinking, what am I grateful for? Yeah. And the hypothesis there would be that you would then, when you're faced with decisions, even that you have, then you would behave or make decisions that are consistent with you being grateful and appreciating your body. So I'm just, that would certainly fit the data. So that hypothesis is in line. I haven't done the research on that particular thing.
Oh, that would be amazing, because if we're talking about your bodies, which are just absolute miracles, that would be, oh, wow. I look forward to hearing more about that. That would be great.
It's one of the, so some people, when the book came out, Tiny Habits, they wrote and said, BJ, I hear your book's really great, but I need big changes, not tiny changes. So this won't work for me. Yeah. And it's that's how you get to the big changes. Exactly. That's how you do it reliably. You should go tiny. And then there's this process of change that happens naturally without even very much effort. Yeah. But some people really, honestly, Patty, won't accept that. They feel like it has to be painful. They feel like they have to deprive themselves. They feel like somehow they have to hit rock bottom before. None of that's true. No. The process that works best is starting tiny and feeling good. Right. And from there, all these ripple effects happen.
Well, I know that when I had my cooking school and I did more nutritional consultations than I do right now, January, everybody and their brother wanted to do 50 million things and be a whole new person. And I would always work really hard on slowing people down, because it doesn't work that way, because which is what you just said.
Yeah. And I just took a big sigh, like how discouraging is that? Yeah. Where year after year, people are set up by themselves or their friends in the media to think, I'm going to do it this year, and somehow I'm going to magically keep my motivation high. Right. So I can do all these things. And if there's a Goliath that Tiny Habits is attacking, it's that one where people somehow think I'm going to magically keep my motivation high. Yep. And that's the Goliath that we need to take down and show that that's not how change happens reliably. No.
And then the tiny habits too. Let's say you woke up and you ate half a pizza for breakfast or something. It's like, oh, today's, I might as well finish off the ice cream because I blew today. So, but that doesn't mean you can't do some push-ups in the afternoon. I mean, you don't, it doesn't have to be today is gone and, it's too late now and we'll start tomorrow. You can start anytime with tiny habits. They're tiny.
Yeah, you can start anytime, and a big part of the method. And I just found myself writing this in email over and over.
Yeah.
When I was coaching people, practice and revise. Revision is part of the method. Practice and revise.
Yeah.
So to be really clear to the people I was coaching, and now it's throughout the book, is, yeah, you are designing a habit into your life, but you probably will need to redesign it and tweak it until it clicks. Just like I see on the back wall there, you have some wonderful paintings. And you might have put those up somewhere in your room and it's like, oh, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And you didn't beat yourself up or feel bad or force it. You just said, well, I'm going to redesign this. That's how to look at the process of creating habits. Is you try something, and if it works, you keep going. And if it doesn't, you adjust it. So you're practicing, but you're revising. Revision is part of the process. And you just give yourself that understanding and that compassion that nobody's perfect in this.
Exactly. Okay. So what's a golden behavior?
Wow. So there's a whole bunch of new stuff in Tiny Habits. In fact, the whole book is my material. I'm not summarizing other people's stuff. And so there's new terminology in there. And golden behavior is one of them. A golden behavior is something that you want to do, you have motivation to do, you can do, you have the ability, and it's going to have impact in the way that you want. So, for example, if I want to reduce my stress, if I'm designing for that, I'm looking for a golden behavior or a golden habit that I want to do. And if I don't want to meditate, don't pick that, because if I don't want that, that's not good. But I do like playing musical instruments. So, bam, and especially woodwinds, because I like the breathing part of it. So I want to do that. Can I do it? Yeah, I got a whole bunch of woodwinds around me. In fact, you can see some in the background.
Yeah.
And then, is it going to be effective? Well, my hypothesis is this is rhythmic deep breathing is, but I'll just try it. And it's like, there we go. So for me, in terms of reducing stress, playing, a huge recorder that requires a lot of breath, I want to, I can, and it's effective. So that's a golden behavior. And that's what you're looking for in new habits is, it's got to be effective.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to do it. And you have to have motivation to do it. Now, notice the difference is you're not tacking on the motivation after the fact. I'm not just picking something random like, I'm going to go dig holes out in the yard and that will reduce my stress. And somehow I'm going to magically motivate myself to do this. You pick habits that you already want to do. At least part of you wants to do it. Yeah. So motivation comes at the beginning of the process. It's not something you bolt on later.
Okay. So in chapter 3, you talk about the fact that most people believe that they have to go big or go home. I think we already covered that a little bit. You give the example, but this is what I want to get to. You give the example of the simplicity of Instagram. So, I mean, we've talked about, you don't have to go big or go home a little bit already, but bring in Instagram and that story. That's really
Instagram. I have such mixed feelings about that.
Oh, okay.
When it started, it was a whole different thing than it is now. I mean, it was this way to help people feel happy and share happy photos, and it's really evolved. So, but Instagram, let's rewind to the early days. The main thing I was teaching my students was simplicity, that make things really, really easy to do. And that just was the pattern and everything that was working. And nobody was really calling that out. And so in my class and so on, they'd read books on simplicity, would focus on simplicity. I would constrain the design project. So they had to make it really, really easy. And the co-founder of Instagram was in one of my classes, and he took that to heart. And Instagram emerged in the context of a whole bunch of different ways to store and share photos. But Instagram was simpler. It was, if you'll remember at the beginning, you only could take square pictures. That's all. And there was 12 filters. That's all. There were no videos. There wasn't stories, anything. It was just drop dead simple. Take a photo, put a filter, share it. Yeah. And that simplicity plus the emotion of the filters, I believe, is what made them emerge and beat out all the competitors. They kept it really simple and they gave people positive emotions. They helped people feel successful. That is absolutely the winning combo in any product. That's absolutely the winning combo with your own habits. Make it really simple and help yourself feel successful. It's the same psychology, whether it's a product that you're really going to love, or whether it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to play the flute every day, or I'm going to do these push-ups every day.
Yeah. Now, so everybody's probably thinking, okay, what tiny habits do I want? So hopefully they will purchase your book, because you have the graphs, you have the work. It's just everything's in there on how to do it. But how do they actually, just as one example, how did you design, skills, tools, tiny?
Yeah. The easiest way, there's two super easy ways, and then we'll get into the conceptual way that you're talking about, Patty. One is, in the back of the book, there are 300 tiny habit recipes. That's in the appendix. So
amazing.
Just look in the back of the book. There's 300 examples right there in the appendix. Another way is to go to tinyhabits.com/recipes with an S on the end. And there's a tool that I designed and I had people create for me and it works best on mobile phones and tablets, where you just swipe through options of here's the habit I want, and here's the anchor I'm going to pair it with. Super simple. It's free. Do that. Now, if you want to not leverage a list of 300 habits or an online tool, the way to think about it is this: you pick anything, like let's say I want more laughter and smiles in my life. So you take any abstract thing and say, okay, if I could get myself to do any behavior that would lead to more laughters and smiles, what would I have myself do? So there's a kind of brainstorm that I call magic wanding. I won't go into the details here, but you come up with a whole bunch of different options. Oh, I'll watch Ted Lasso every night, and I'll watch it over and over. I will put a funny hat on my little dog every morning. I will tell a joke at dinner every night. You come up with a whole bunch of options. Then let's say you have 20 options. Then you find what is the golden behavior there. So what's going to have impact? Well, a little hat on my dog. Give me laughters and smiles. Yeah, probably. Am I motivated to do it? Oh yeah, because Millie would be very funny. And do I have the ability? Yeah, sort of. I don't have the hat, but I think I can make one or find one. So that could be a golden behavior. Then I have to figure out, when do I do this? When do I put the little hat on my dog? And by the way, my dog loves collars and stuff. So I'm not abusing her. She loves it. So it might be, we'll pick up on the tea. After I start the coffee maker, I'll put this little hat on my dog, Millie. And so that's how I go from the abstract, I need more laughters and smiles, go through a process. It's a process. It's a system. You're not guessing. It's a system. All these options, pick the best option, and then design it, find the anchor moment, and then you practice. And if it's not working, you revise. So that is a quick run through. If you're not using the list in the book or the recipe maker at tinyhabits.com/recipes, that's how to flow through it.
I think also one thing that I did right in the beginning, however many years ago, I have many anchor habits. I always like to think I have a lot of anchor habits. I think most people do when you start looking at it. But I have picked a few. I was starting to try to do too many tiny habits, and it was just, oh, wait a minute, I didn't do my squats while I'm brushing my teeth, or, so I just picked a few that I do. And I think, same with the whole January, everybody has to get healthy thing. I think it's probably important, correct me if I'm wrong, to only pick like a few to start with.
Yeah. Yes. But let me start here. The old idea that you only can do one habit at a time is not true. That's not true. And from the beginning in the Tiny Habits free 5-day program that still exists and still's free. I didn't mention that. You can go just do Tiny Habits and have a real coach that I've trained help you, like a real person helps you. There's 3, and you learn more by practicing 3. Some people push it and do a lot more, which is fine. It's like a good exercise. It's a style issue, Patty, as I see it. It's just like me practicing the guitar or the recorder or the flute or whatever. How many songs do I want to work on at a time? Do I want to work on 1 or 12 or 3? It's a style issue, but you absolutely can do work on 3 habits at a time. You don't have to restrict yourself to 1.
Okay. So this, as I was telling you right before we started, in chapter 5, something about this kind of spoke to me. This is a quote: "We rarely recognize our successes and feel good about what we've done. I understand it, as most will, but how does that tie into tiny habits? I mean, just our successes, when we kind of beat ourselves up a lot, don't we?"
No, we do. And early in the book, I address that. I basically say, look, if you've tried to change and it hasn't worked, it is not your fault. It's not a character flaw. You just didn't have this way to change. Mm-hmm. And so many people have sent me emails or on Zoom meetings, but mostly email these days. There's thank you so much. They needed to hear that. Yeah. And they probably thought that before, but they needed to hear, somebody with a Stanford name attached to them, or who knows why. Yeah. But a big theme in the book is you change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. Mm-hmm. And I think I bring that into every chapter. I decided to weave that through because it was about 4 months in. So this, again, is over 10 years ago. I've been teaching Tiny Habits, 5-day program for 4 months. Probably had 300 people that week. And I was, cranking out, coaching people, responding, helping people revise. And a woman wrote me, it was on a Wednesday, because that's the day we talk about celebration, which is this way you cause yourself to feel good. And she said, "Thank you so much, BJ. I now see I've endured a lifetime of self-trash talk."
Yeah.
Patty, that, call me naive, but that was mind-blowing to me. I was like, what? Yeah. And then I started reading all the emails differently. Now I was tuned into that, and I realized this was pervasive. And so that probably was the moment where I shifted from, isn't this thing I'm teaching, it's kind of quirky and it's fun and I feel good to help people. Yeah. And I shifted from not really understanding why I was offering this and spending my time other than I like to help people to, oh my gosh, there are millions, if not billions of people like this woman who just live with self-trash talk, and Tiny Habits can shift them out of that, where they can recognize and appreciate and embrace the good and embrace the positive emotions and learn to not listen to the self-trash talk and to give themselves compassion rather than criticism and shame and shade. And that then became, I think it was that moment when I was like, oh, the stakes are totally different than I thought.
Yeah.
I must keep doing this. I need to bring this to the world. I need to get better at this. Mm-hmm. And that was a really important moment for me. I remember exactly where I was. And I remember the table I was sitting at, and just kind of the chills that you get in those moments, like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And then now people, especially women, say, BJ, you're so naive. How did you not know that? And it's like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that people were so self-critical, but now I do.
Yeah.
And I'm out to change that. Yeah.
And I think too, the self-critical starts young and it keeps building perhaps for, like we said, you said most people. So you can't take something like that or any habit. Our bodies, our minds don't work fast to get rid of these maybe health-wise bad habits or mental bad habits. So you can't give up, right? How do you, that's the tough part, to keep people to know that, 6 months from now, you're going to, keep them on the path. That's the tricky part.
Well, one thing, so the class that I'm teaching at Stanford starting 6 days from now, I'm so excited. I can teach anything I want. I can teach any quarter or not teach. I have a ton of flexibility. And I decided this quarter, what the students really need was more humor and happiness in their lives. So my class is called Tiny Habits for Humor and Happiness. And we are reading a book called Humor Seriously by my Stanford colleagues, and we're putting it into the Tiny Habits system. And then we're reading a book that's not quite out yet called The Gap in the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. That's not quite out, but I read early versions. And this book, it comes from Dan Sullivan's work at Strategic Coach, is all about not looking at the gap, like, oh, here's all the ways I'm not reaching my ideal, or you look at the gain, you measure your progress backwards. You look back and you see all the ways that you've gained. In fact, this morning, I made a list of all the gains from yesterday.
Oh.
Now, the habit was to do it in the evening, but last evening was weird and it didn't happen last evening. And so in the Tiny Habits way, I didn't beat myself up. I said, I'm just going to do it this morning. And in a notebook, just like this one, it's not in this one, but just like this one, I wrote, what were all my gains from yesterday? And I came up with 12 or 15. And that, when I read the book, because it aligns so well with the Tiny Habits, help yourself feel successful, and you change this by feeling good. So when I read that concept, look at your gains and measure your gains, and have a daily ritual / habit of writing them down.
Yeah.
I'm going to have my students do that. I think, especially Stanford students who are so focused on achievement and probably so self-critical. We are going to do a pre-test at the beginning of the quarter to assess how they're doing mentally and emotionally. And we'll do one 10 weeks later, and we'll see what effect that this plus the humor has on their lives. So it's that important that it is the focus of the next quarter of my teaching at Stanford.
Well, that's going to be interesting, especially, I suppose the world has always had a lot of bad news, but we all know about all of it all the time. So, how to kind of thread that needle about not being there and helping what's going on in the world, but yet maintaining your sense of health and happiness and perspective. So that's
and let me build on that. There was something my partner and I did a while back when things were hard. So my partner and I, we've been together like 25 years. And as gay men, and it's not been easy. I mean, rewind 25 years.
Yeah.
And we both come from a Mormon background. So imagine how hard that is. We didn't know anybody like us 25 years, like zero. Yeah. And we didn't know anybody partnered. But fast forward, so we've been through a lot. But there was a time when we decided to have this thing we called Good News Friday. So on Fridays, you couldn't say anything negative. And if somebody did, you'd say Good News Friday, and then they would have to. And that was a wonderful thing in our lives. I think I might push that out on social or kind of see if that will catch on.
That's awesome.
Good News Friday. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. What's today? Today's only Tuesday. I like it. I'm looking forward to Good News Friday. So now you also mentioned that emotion creates habits. So emotions create habits. So what does that exactly mean?
Oh my gosh. Those three words, Patty, emotions create habits.
I know. I've read those. I thought would be,
I mean, you could do it either way, but it's that concept that I thought would be so controversial. I mean, I've been teaching it for over 10 years and applying it and measuring it, and, ran a study where some people celebrated and some people didn't, and saw the impact of. And celebration is a way to feel emotions. Yeah. So I knew the concept was accurate, but it goes against the tradition. The tradition is repetition creates habits. And that's not true. I mean, if somebody wants to, look at what they cite, and usually they cite a study by Lally. I mean, anyone can look it up, Lally 2009. Sometimes it's referred to as 2010. Even just reading the abstract of that study, this is what people have cited over and over, like, it's repetition and it's 66 days. That study does not show causal effects. It was not designed to show that repetition would cause the habit to form. It uses nonlinear regression. It's a correlation, but it's not causal. Yeah. And so, but that idea is really strong in people's minds. So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so much criticism. But guess what, Patty? Almost the opposite has happened. Once people read that and see that and just experience it, right? It's like, oh yeah. And I since the year and a half or since my book has been out, I do think the conversation, I don't have a way to measure this. Well, I guess there would be a way to measure. I haven't measured it. My feeling is that the conversation around habits really has shifted. You almost never see this idea of just keep repeating it, that emotion creates the habits. And people are saying, oh, feel good, make sure that you feel good, and so on. So, and that happened first, I thought I was going to be super criticized. And I didn't think it would catch on that fast, but I think it is. And the way babies learn to walk. I mean, what are the parents doing? Cheering them on, helping them have this positive emotion. The way we help our dogs learn to do things on demand, right? We are reinforcing them. So in the tiny habits way, you are self-reinforcing by causing yourself to feel a positive emotion. So you're hacking your brain through causing yourself to feel an emotion. Some people are very good at this. Some people are not so good at it. Everyone can learn to get better at that. And we call that technique celebration. And again, it's about self-reinforcing. It's about causing that behavior to become more automatic. And you do that by feeling good, by feeling successful.
And I think that the average non-scientist knows is starting to hear the causal versus correlation a lot more out in mainstream right now. So they're starting to figure out what that means. So, well,
I can give a quick example just to be really clear. So let's say I do a study and I show that the more time that someone spends in the gym, the more fit they are.
Yeah.
Okay. So time in the gym correlates that match. So I could say, oh, just go to the gym and you'll get fit. Well, then people might go to the gym and just hang out at the snack bar. That's not making them fit, right? That's exactly how people have interpreted this study. So being at the gym does not cause you to get fit. It's what you do at the gym. So doing a habit over and over does not cause it to become automatic in your life. It's how you feel when you do that behavior. Okay. So that might be one of the cleanest, fastest ways to show how people confuse correlation with causality is just think, yeah, of course, people that are in the gym more are more fit, but being in the gym isn't what causes it. It's what you do. Just like repetition doesn't cause it. It's how you feel when you do that behavior that creates the habit.
Oh, yeah. Very, very important. So, okay, now we've got 20 minutes left, and this is a big topic. We talked about it not long ago. So I'd like to pivot a little bit to the end of your book, where we talk about, and you and I had a discussion about the word bad habits, and we decided, well, there's no other good word to say, so we're going to talk bad habits. So the pivot I'd like to do is I want to talk about untangling bad habits and tie it into COVID. Individual. I mean, you look at TikTok, you look at anywhere, and everybody's got, a bottle of wine and a straw, and the wine goes around the sunglasses and goes in their mouth. And I mean, it's kind of funny, but when you start seeing people sitting in sinks with bottles of wine and songs, and it's catchy and it's funny, but it's not funny for after a while, because I mean, again, I'm concerned about people's, liver and their health. So how do but yet we have been through we've been through a pandemic, for goodness sakes. We're still in it. So people have been, the ultra processed foods and, and children eating more of that and too much alcohol. So as a group, as an individual, how do we change together? How do we untangle these bad habits? Okay,
you warned me and everybody, this is a big topic. It is. And you said an important word twice. It's untangle. So again, in my work, I'm a renegade. I didn't accept the tradition as the way to do it. And I do not accept the word break a bad habit. I reject that word. And the word I suggest is untangle.
Yeah.
You untangle it because it's not a matter of force in one moment. Like breaking implies force in one moment and you'll be done with, all the drinking habits that you don't want. You untangle it. And there's a process. And there are, in the appendix, 3 pages of flowcharts where step by step, I'm not going to go through that, but just know that there is a system, and the way to think about it is you untangle. And so let's take drinking. Let's go there head on. Let's take COVID drinking plus the others.
Right.
You've got to figure out what are all the tangles in this alcohol habit that somebody might have, and list. What are all the times? Like maybe you have a drink at lunch. Maybe you have a drink right after work gets over. Maybe you have a drink right before dinner. Maybe you have a drink after dinner. Maybe you have a drink when you go to the art festival on the weekend and so on. So list, because the habit of drinking isn't just one behavior. It's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And habit of snacking isn't just one habit, it's a whole bunch of them. So think of it as a tangle,
Right.
list those. And I'm just going to warn you, as you list those, there's going to be a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, but don't stop there. Please, please.
Yeah.
Then find the easiest one that you can stop,
Right.
not the hardest one, the
Yeah.
easiest one. And it might be, when I go to the Art and Wine Festival on the weekends, I don't have to get wine. So that's the one I'm going to stop. Okay. Pick the easiest one.
Yeah.
Or when I go to lunch with a business colleague, I don't have to have an alcoholic drink. Maybe that's the easiest one. So you just go pick the easiest one, untangle it. And there's a method for it, how you and it goes back to motivation, ability, prompt, and then take the next easiest one, then take the next easiest one. So you start with the easiest one, the one that you're most sure you can do.
Mhm.
And that's one approach to untangling these unwanted habits.
Mhm.
And even just the word untangle versus break, I think is important. I mean, there's a chapter on it. There's flow charts, how to, step by step, which isn't going to be interesting to go into all the detail, but just the idea that it's not, for most of these habits, it's not just a sudden thing and you're done, that it's a process that might seem confusing at first, like your headset's all tangled up. But if you just do the easiest one and then do the next one, you're going to get there. So despite how overwhelming it seems when you have the headset all tangled up, if you understand that it's a process and you don't start with the hardest tangle, you start with the easiest. Apply that to the unwanted habits in your life.
Mm-hmm. And for the, day drinkers, that was something that 20 years ago, people didn't really necessarily, other than Frank Sinatra, maybe, or that era and the 3 martini lunches, but day drinkers that term is pretty common now. And, and you can kind of get it. I mean, you've got that people are stressed, that kids are at home and it's been an incredibly stressful time, but maybe what about tying in, and this is just off the cuff. So what about tying in, let's say somebody who has a glass of rosé at 2 p.m. or something, or whatever it is, tying it into, well, if I don't have this today, tied it into something like, I know my skin is going to look better in a week, or maybe this isn't the best example for my kids, or but that's a negative. That's kind of a guilt. Nobody likes guilt.
You certainly can find reasons for any social media habit, snacking habit, drinking habit, smoking. Really get clear on what it would mean in your life to be able to conquer this. But there's also a social element, and you mentioned this earlier, that the people around you really do influence our behavior. People around us really do influence our behaviors more than we think.
Yeah.
And when I moved up to wine country, I didn't drink at all. I was raised Mormon. So I didn't have any palate for wine. I didn't care about wine. If I did, it would be white Zinfandel. And I had no idea that was tacky. I had no idea, because what did I know? I'd bring white Zinfandel to parties and people would look at me like, you're so tacky, but I didn't know. But living in the wine country for 2 decades, it's all around, and and the people around. Now, I have completely stopped drinking. I mean, I'm not against other people drinking, but I want to go to the social piece of that. There were little things I did, like, I'm not going to drink on the plane. I'm not going to drink at this business mixer. And I was practicing this in small ways, like the little tangles. And then there was a point where I'd taken out the small enough tangles that I could completely stop the rest. So then there was a moment after practicing, not on the plane, not at business meetings, not at lunch. And I learned how to do that. Mm-hmm. Then I was stopped completely. And then I remember going to a party with some friends, and we would typically drink at this party. And I'd say, and my partner was on board with me. It's like, we're not drinking tonight. We're going to stick with water. And at first they just gave us this look like, what is going on? And do you have a serious problem? And it's like, no, we're just going to stick to water tonight.
Yeah.
And that group, we'd get together every few weeks. And over time, that became a lot less of a drinking party and more of an activity party. And so even Yeah. And so it
Collective
was,
shift.
yeah. And it wasn't through judging or telling them to.
Yeah.
In fact, we go to events and we hide we just don't,
Yeah.
we don't want to be preachy, but
Right.
you can be the inspiration for others like, oh, yeah, I'm sticking to water too. And you can shift your social group in that way.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So individuals, we talked about that a little bit. Social group, we have a whole world who has been going through all of this, the collective, so what do we do about, I guess we can't worry about everything. We just worry about ourselves and changing ourselves. And if you're, and maybe, like you said, influencing those people in your life, and then maybe that ripples effects out to help people. And it's not just drinking. I don't know why I don't reason I choose drinking as an example, because it seems to be pervasive.
It's pretty pervasive. And, and I don't have a stand on everyone should stop or not. I just, in my personal life, I know it's been helpful. Though there's a time, Patty, I thought I never would. I was like, why would I stop? Because I live in wine country and Anyway, but let me go here. The fact that somebody posts on social and says, look, I'm exercising every day, look at me. That is a great, courageous act, because it's helping people see, yes, you can change.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like, no, I'm stuck. I just, I'm too old to change or whatever. And so by sharing success stories in a way that's non-judgmental and not preachy, but just saying, yeah, it is possible. I thought I wasn't going to be able to turn the corner in my 40s, but I did. Right. Yeah. And oh my gosh, you can. And you're never too old to create new habits and optimize your life. And so I do think people need hope. Hope. That's what the Tiny Habits method is about. That's what my book is about. That's what the 5-day program is. Give people hope that they can change, and then give them a very specific, tactical, reliable method for doing so. And I would pull in that when people share their successes in changing, that the way I read that is not so much they're bragging, but they are trying to inspire others and give other people hope.
Exactly. Now, okay, we've talked about, the food and the alcohol, but I want to focus the rest of our time here really on the struggles people are having with mental health and with what's going on in the world and everything. I mean, all groups, my son is a veteran. My brother was in Vietnam, and pulling out of Afghanistan, and the veterans group that I follow, the suicide rate, and horrible. So there's groups of people that have a collective mental health issue. Yeah. And then we have all the negative, and I worry about children, all the negative feelings. How do we, individuals, our families, how do we, with everything, the climate, of course, is everybody's big concern. How do we collectively change the mindset so everybody is not so down in the dumps? So, it's kind of the chicken and the egg. What comes first, the down in the dumps or the alcohol that we were talking about? Probably the down in the dumps.
Yeah. A lot of these habits are a response to trauma and stress. That's just the fact.
Yeah.
People coping with things. So in part, in my Stanford class, the students don't know this yet, but what I want them to become is the source of positivity for other people in their lives. And I want to learn how to, I mean, every class I teach at Stanford is a new class. I never teach the same class twice. I pick what I think is important. And this is humor and happiness, I think, is really important. But I also want to innovate and understand, how do you become the source of positivity for others? And can that be taught? And can that then spread? Oh. And so I will have a much better answer for you in 12 weeks on that front. Yeah. On the mental health front, Patty, you don't know this. This is very up close and personal. My niece is in the mental hospital, and she's been incarcerated for, I want to say 6 months, 8 months, and serious bipolar issues and managing that well. Yeah. I probably spend an hour to 2 hours a week on the phone with her in different segments.
Yeah.
And the thing that she needs, and the system's not that great. The system's kind of broken, but everyone's doing the best they can. In fact, that's one very helpful habit to have, is to say everyone's doing the best they can. But what I think my role for her is to give her hope. So I'm going back to the hope. So even last night when I was talking to her and just helping her see the progress that she's made. And there's a way you level up and get more freedom from all the way from solitary lockdown to now you can go to the cafeteria. To the next level up is you can go to the vending machine and the next level up is you can order a pizza. And so, or something like that.
Right.
And for me, I talked to her. I try to keep it light and fun and quirky because I'm kind of a goofball. But I'm always trying to help her see, one, how much progress she's made, and two, that she can continue to progress, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And that is, she's starving for hope. Yeah. And I always tell her the truth. She knows that even when she's in the worst situations, I was like, I'm always going to tell you the truth. You will always get the straight scoop from me. Yep. But now I tell her the truth about her progress and about her potential. Yeah. And that seems to be exactly what she needs.
Powerful word potential. So, and of course, people with bipolar, are generally self-medicate in some ways. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Oh, I was going to make a point there. But thank you for sharing that. But I know what it was. I think some people are just naturally, for whatever reason, optimistic and positive. And some people, and I can think of people in both categories, are just a little bit Eeyore-ish, and you can soak up either person's energy. Yeah. And one, you want to soak up the positive and the energetic and the happy, but if you're not careful, you can soak up the negative. You have to most people have to be very careful of that. So just to be aware of the people in your world, and if they're relatives, then they're your relatives, but you have to understand, to put up some sort of boundary and not soaking up their energy. And also, relishing the fact that people feel better around you, so, and helping people, by not being preachy. It goes back to food too, and alcohol. You can't preach to people, but, just try to be happy around the people that are not necessarily happy.
Let me build on that. That's such an important point in the Tiny Habits Win. I've done this in a few contexts of my life. Okay. After I hear someone say something negative, I will say something positive. And often I try to make it funny or weird. Yeah. And there was a specific person in our life. I will call this person Eric. It wasn't his real name, but very negative. Everything was negative. And it was a downer being with him. Yeah. And so we did like him and we liked his wife a lot and we didn't want to not hang with them. So we just decided after Eric says something negative, we will say something positive. And it kind of just became a game that my partner and I did, but it had an effect. He seemed to shift, and the dinners with them, rides in the car with them just shifted. Wow. And that could be an approach anybody could take. After I hear somebody saying something negative, I will say something positive. Now, to do that well, you don't want to go confront it.
No, because
there's kind of an art to that I found, and I'm still working on it. But you absolutely, I'll give an example, Patty. Somebody did this. I was teaching a class in the spring. I had a co-teacher, and I was a little frustrated with my Stanford students because they weren't really performing. They were moderating groups, and they weren't as good in moderating the groups as I thought they should be. And I mentioned that to my co-teacher, Ron, and he came back and said, "Hey, BJ, they're learning, they're doing fine. They're going to get there." And damn, that was a wake-up call. He's like, "You are right, Ron. What am I complaining about? Why do I think they're going to, have the moderation skills of a 58-year-old guy when they're students?" Yeah. And that really shifted. It was one charitable, positive comment from Ron Gutman that made me shift. And my attitude around that frustration totally shifted. And I think it even shifted my perspective on the whole course. So it can be that simple sometimes.
And sometimes I think with the negative people that I know, I hate to just categorize people as only that, but I think we all know where they're going. Sometimes just as saying, well, if they're complaining, just acknowledging that, sounds like an armchair psychologist here, but still just acknowledge what they're thinking, yeah, I understand. And then coming up with something so you don't sound preachy, or you're not trying to diminish what they're thinking, because I know we have to be careful with that, but just acknowledging and then sort of maybe reframing, transmuting. I don't know what the word is.
Well, it goes back to a tiny habit recipe is after whatever that anchor moment is, someone says, I will have a game plan. Yeah. And then practice and revise. Okay. So practice it. Yep. And it's like, oh, that came across a little preachy. That's not quite right. Or that was too snarky, or that was perfect. Right. Yeah. So you practice and you revise. I know I have people in my life that are so wonderful at that. And I really admire them. And so part of me learning to be better at being the source of positivity is tuning into people in my life who already are and watching how they do it, and then making those kinds of reactions habits in my own life.
Yeah. Well, again, and in the book you have, there's glasses. My recipe, tiny, after, and then the list, and then I will, and then a celebration. I love that. So your anchor moment, your tiny behavior, and your celebration, ABC.
ABC.
How about that?
Anchor, behavior, celebration.
Yeah, ABC. So, it's 11. We have maybe another minute. Is there something else other than everyone? I hope you purchase the book and really read it and study it, because though we've talked about a lot of details, there's so much more that we can't get to. And I just, but there's, I'm looking forward to listening to this again when it's live, because, you've given a lot of really wonderful tips that are going to help people on so many different levels. So any closing comments?
Yes. I mean, creating habits is easier than you think. And even the tiniest of changes can transform your life because of the ripple effects. And now, more than ever in all our lives, is the time to do this. Yes, our habits changed because of the pandemic. When your environment changes, your habits change. Yeah. And our environment continues to shift. And that means our habits will shift. We can either design the habits or just let them grow like weeds. I'm saying you can design them. It's not that hard. It's kind of like a garden. You plant the seed in a good spot and you nurture it, and you have this beautiful transformation. So it's not that hard. And now's the time. It's so just dive in. Yeah.
I love that. Now's the time. Isn't that? Yeah. And that's the pleasure of this, is that you can start now with something little. And 7 years later of doing push-ups, and your arms are a lot better, in better shape than they would have been otherwise. So anyway, this was really, really wonderful, BJ. Thank you so much for being here. So in closing, our thanks to BJ Fogg, Dr. Fogg, for his comments here today, as well as those listening to this recording. This program and more like it will be posted on the club's website, www.commonwealthclub.org, very soon. And now, this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, commemorating 118 years of enlightened discussion, is adjourned.